From a very young age, we are taught to revere the educator. Now, society brands teaching as the ultimate noble profession, a stable, secure career choice offering a reliable government paycheck, excellent health insurance, summers off, and a guaranteed pension at the end of the line. It is a career path defined by civic virtue. But if you look past the inspirational plaques and audit the actual personal bank accounts of modern public school teachers, you will find an economic crisis that is quietly hollowing out the American education system. Because behind the promise of summers off lies a staggering financial trap, a world where teachers are forced to take on corporate-level student debt to qualify for blue-collar wages, a reality where thousands of educators are essentially paying a luxury tax just to work a public service job. What if I told you that in many states, it is legally impossible to keep a teaching job without a master's degree, yet the state pay scales don't even cover the interest on that degree? What if the legendary teacher pension is quietly being eaten away by massive mandatory deductions? And what if teachers are routinely penalized by a hidden federal law that strips away their Social Security? Today, we are running a comprehensive economic audit on the education sector. We will strip away the idealized myths of the teaching lifestyle, calculate the brutal reality of credential inflation, expose the hidden out-of-pocket costs of running a modern classroom, and run the real post-debt monthly take-home math. Let's find out what it actually costs to educate the next generation. To understand the teacher debt crisis, we have to look at an asymmetric regulatory barrier: credential inflation. In many professions, a master's degree is an optional lever used to unlock elite management pay. In public education, it is increasingly becoming a mandatory requirement just to keep your entry-level desk. States like New York and Maryland legally require teachers to earn a master's degree within their first 5 to 10 years of employment to maintain their professional teaching license. If they don't get the degree, they lose their job. The average cost of a master's in education hovers between $35,000 and $60,000. When you combine undergraduate loans with mandatory graduate school tuition, the National Education Association tracks that the average debt for an educator holding a master's degree hits roughly $75,000. Now let's look at the baseline return on that investment. The national average starting salary for a teacher is just $44,530. In the corporate sector, a debt-to-income ratio of over 1 times is considered a severe financial red flag. For a starting teacher, their debt-to-income ratio routinely sits at an unlivable 1.68 times. They are carrying medical school tier debt ratios on a retail manager tier income at a standard 10-year repayment schedule with federal interest rates hovering around 7%. A $75,000 loan requires a payment of roughly $850 a month. On a starting teacher's gross monthly salary of $3,710, student loan servicing alone instantly devours nearly 23% of their pre-tax earnings before they have even paid a single dollar for rent or groceries. Unlike the corporate world, where top performers can negotiate massive raises or jump companies for a 30% salary bump, teachers are locked into a hyper-rigid, union-mandated cage called the step and lane salary matrix. Your pay is determined strictly by 2 metrics: how many college credits you have, and how many years you have sat in that specific school district's chairs. Growth is agonizingly slow. A teacher often has to work for 15 to 20 consecutive years just to climb from their $45,000 starting pay to a maximum salary ceiling of $85,000. When adjusted for modern inflation, real teacher wages have actually decreased by an estimated 4% over the last decade. But the salary stagnation is only half the battle. Teaching is one of the only professions where employees are culturally and operationally expected to personally subsidize their employer's supply chain. This is the classroom tax. According to federal data, a staggering 94% of public school teachers spend their own personal money on classroom supplies. Because school district budgets are perpetually stretched thin, teachers routinely pay out of pocket for basic essentials like paper, pencils, books, sensory toys, and even cleaning supplies. The average teacher quietly loses between $500 and $1,000 a year directly off their net income just to keep their classroom functional. Now add the reality of unpaid labor. A teacher's official contract might state they work 7.5 hours a day for 180 days a year. But when you factor in grading essays at night, lesson planning on Sundays, mandatory professional development, and running underfunded extracurricular clubs, the actual hours logged completely shatter the summers off luxury myth. When critics point out low teacher salaries, defenders of the system always point to the ultimate safety net, the public pension. The assumption is that low current pay is a fair trade-off for a guaranteed, gold-plated retirement check. But the modern pension system hides two major structural traps. First, pensions are not free corporate benefits. They are heavily employee-funded. In states like California, Illinois, or Ohio, teachers face massive mandatory pension deductions ranging from 10 to 14.5% of every single paycheck, right off the top. This severely chokes their liquid cash flow during their prime house buying and family raising years. Second, and most shockingly, comes a federal policy that almost nobody outside of public service talks about: the Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP, and the Government Pension Offset, or GPO. In 15 states, public school teachers do not pay into the federal Social Security system. They only pay into their state pension. You would assume this means they simply rely on their pension. But if that teacher worked a corporate job for 15 years before entering teaching and fully earned a Social Security benefit, the federal WEP law steps in and legally slashes their earned Social Security check by up to 50% simply because they receive a teacher pension. Even worse, the GPO clause can completely eliminate any Social Security spousal or survivor benefits if their husband or wife passes away. The system effectively penalizes career switchers and educators, locking them into an illiquid state pension system while clawing back their federal retirement rights. To see the raw, unfiltered truth of the educator's economic squeeze, let's run the definitive, real-world monthly balance sheet for a mid-career public school teacher holding a mandatory master's degree. Now, to be clear, teachers in high-paying states like New York earn more, around $92,000 on average, but the national median is $65,000, and that's where most teachers actually live. For this audit, we're using the median because half of all teachers earn less than this. If the math looks bad here, remember it's worse for millions of others. We start with an established, mid-career national median teacher salary of $65,000 a year, which yields a gross monthly income of $5,416. First, we subtract standard progressive federal, state, and local taxes, which removes $1,191. Next, we apply the mandatory state pension deduction of 11%, stripping away $595. Now, we deduct their premium share for the district health insurance plan, taking away $450. Next, we factor in their standard federal student loan payment for that mandatory master's degree, removing a massive $850. Finally, we amortize their out-of-pocket classroom spending, taking a conservative monthly bite of $70. The final result, a real, liquid, post-debt net take-home cash flow of exactly $2,260 a month. When you divide that $2,260 by the actual hours logged grading, planning, and managing a classroom of 30 children, a mid-career professional with a master's degree is working for an effective wage that frequently falls below $13 an hour. This is the true crisis of modern education. We are asking the people responsible for shaping the minds of the next generation to survive on an economic model that is structurally broken. They are trading their financial futures, taking on historic levels of credential debt, and facing systemic retirement penalties just to answer a call to serve. The passion of our educators is keeping the system alive, but passion doesn't pay the rent. Let me know what your real take-home pay looks like in the comments below. If you are an educator. Thanks for watching. That wraps up our first 10 profession audits. Next time, we're auditing what NFL players actually keep after taxes and agent fees. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Because we're just getting started breaking down what jobs really pay once every layer gets stripped away.